Welcome back, Freedom Protectors. Today we're talking about Glock safety checks and build safety, two of the most important topics we could ever discuss in our build community. Now I'm going to go through with you today exactly how to do all of the safety checks on your Glock build to make sure that she's locked and loaded, ready to go, and she is safe to carry. But we also need to talk about build safety and gunsmithing safety because that plays an enormous role in it as well. So let's just review the general rules of firearm safety. And the truth here is that, you know, law enforcement kind of has a set, and military has a set, and NRA has a set. You go to different gun ranges and they have different language around it. Some have 4, some have 6, some have 8 rules. And the truth of the matter there is they're all kind of saying the same thing, which is they want you to have a healthy respect for firearms. So I'm a former Marine, I am a gunsmith, and so I have 6 that I have implemented in my life, and I'll just share them with you. I always treat every weapon as if it were loaded. I always point my muzzle in a safe direction. I always keep my finger straight and off the trigger until I intend to fire. I never point my weapon at anything I do not intend to shoot. And I always know my target before I pull the trigger, and I know what's behind it. Okay, so those are kind of the general rules of safety as I have learned them in my life and have practiced them and have kept me safe. But what has also kept me safe as a gunsmith and working on, you know, hundreds and hundreds of weapons in my lifetime is to implement safety around gunsmithing and armoring. And these aren't in any manual or on the web somewhere, okay? They're rules that I have applied over 25 years of gunsmithing in order to implement and keep me safe. And I'm proud to say that in that time frame, I've never had a negligent discharge, okay? And I attribute that directly to having good discipline in applying some of these build and gunsmithing rules that I'm going to share with you, right? The very first one I have is always know the weapon you're working on. And so today we're going to be working on a Glock firearm. And, you know, look, you never want to be working on a firearm and you're not familiar with that weapons platform. Okay, as a gunsmith, I have people come to me all of the time with different guns, and it's impossible, even after 2.5 decades of doing it, of knowing every single gun that's out there. Okay, sometimes, you know, Marine gun builder, my great-great-grandfather passed this down to me through the generations, and, you know, I need you to restore it, okay? And so I have to become familiar with that weapon platform. Today we're talking about the Glock. Now, over on marinegunbuilder.com in the Education Center, I have tons of reference material for you. I have books in PDF format. I have Glock armoring manuals there as well, all free, all available for download. So, you know, if you want to be a Glock geek like me, head on over there and you can download all that information. Number 2, though, is that I never have live ammunition anywhere in my workspace. And preferably, you want no live ammunition in the room you're working in. Okay, and I know that sometimes, you know, depending on your living situation, can be really difficult to do. So if ammunition has to be in the same room where you're working on your firearm or armoring or gunsmithing, then it should be stowed and secured and locked away, okay? But absolutely, positively, it should be nowhere near your workspace or accessible to you, okay? In line with that is number 3, which is to always have dummy rounds, okay? And I kind of hit this home in the builder's checklist, and I'll say it again, but the number 1 tool, okay, that you need when building any type of firearm is dummy rounds. You never ever want to be in a position where you are function checking or doing diagnostics on a weapon and using live rounds. You never want to do that. And as a matter of fact, you know, I'm known in our community to quickly jump on video chat with a freedom protector and help him or her work through a problem. And I cannot tell you how many times I have jumped on a video chat or a group video chat and somebody is having a feeding issue and they go and they're trying to show me and they have live rounds and I end the video conference immediately. And then they usually get really, really upset with me, okay? But the truth of the matter is I'm not going to sit there and, you know, engage with you when you're in an unsafe condition. So dummy rounds are absolutely positively, in my mind, the number 1 thing that you need. I'll put them down there in the comments in the different calibers so that you can get them, okay? But it's not even a discussion for me. The next one is going to be never work on firearms or do any type of gunsmithing or armoring, if you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol or prescription medication. And I mean, I think that goes without saying, but the reality is that I understand that too. Like, right, I'm going to go in my garage and I'm going to build my gun on a Saturday afternoon, and I'm going to have a beer and build my Glock. And all I'm really trying to say there is, like, you build the gun, then have the beer. Okay. In line with that is to never work on firearms when you're tired, okay? And, look, for me, that actually hits home all the time, especially now as I'm filming this. It's during the time of the COVID-19 outbreak, right? So, parents have become school teachers as well. I have 3 small children. And so, when do I actually have time to do a recording or to work on firearms right now in this period is at night when everybody's going to bed. But I'm tired. Okay, so I don't. And as a matter of fact, I've put out less videos in this time than I ever have, and YouTube's been punishing me for it. But the truth of the matter is I'm safe, and that's what matters, okay? So you never really want to be working on firearms while you're tired. The next one is going to be no distractions. That's a conversation that you kind of have to have with the people that you live with, depending on your living situation. It could be a crucial conversation. It could be a difficult conversation. All right. But the reality is that you are working on a firearm and you want 0 distractions, whatever block of time that you're going to be working on those firearms. And so I want you to understand that these rules that I'm giving you, they work in conjunction with each other. Okay. They're not separate. They work collaboratively together and collectively. All right. So, like, let's say I wasn't paying attention to the live ammunition one, and I had live ammunition in my workspace, and then I'm distracted, right? And I get distracted or I get interrupted, and then I come back and boom, this is how negligent discharges happen. Okay. And so they work together in conjunction with each other. But with no disruptions, you have to have that conversation with the folks that you live with that, look, in this block of time, I'm going to be working on a firearm and I want to be safe. Okay. So no interruptions and no distractions. The next one is developing a system of safety. Okay. So, I think it's something that I probably have to do an entire video on in the future. But really quick, like I said, I have 3 small children in the firearms industry. So, there's not a day that doesn't go by that I don't have my hands on a firearm in some form or fashion. Okay. And the truth there is that I've had to develop a system over a period of time that keeps me safe and everybody else safe. Okay. So I'll give you an example of that. I have all my lowers in one safe and I have all my uppers in another. I don't ever have them mixed together. I have ammunition yet in another safe with magazines. So they're all completely different. The only guns that I have assembled that are ready to go are my carry weapon and my home defense weapon. Everything else is in different safes. That also keeps us safe, but it's also a security thing, right? In case, somebody was stupid enough to break into Marine Gun Builder's home and they were able to survive in order to get to the safes, they got to break into many different safes, okay? And it makes it really, really difficult for them. So that's like a system of safety. And then last but not least is to have good PPE practices, right? Personal protective equipment. So with the Glock firearm, we're not doing too much here with heavy machinery. But, as you grow and build in your skill set and building 80% firearms, having gloves and masks and ear protection, eye protection, all play an enormous role in keeping you safe and making sure that you have a very long career in gun building. All right. So with all that said, that's all of our safety rules. What we're going to do is we're going to jump down here and I'm going to walk you through how to do different safety checks on your Glock firearm. All right, let's go ahead and bang out these Glock safety checks. So the first thing that I'm going to do whenever I clear any weapon is to find the magazine release button and drop the magazine. Next, I'm going to go ahead and pull the slide back, and I'm going to look down that mag well along the back of the breech face into the feed ramp area up into the chamber as a first visual pass to make sure that I see no obstructions. The next thing I'm going to do, give it a couple of racks, and that's just a really good healthy habit to get into. Next, we're going to lock open the slide, and we are going to now visually and physically inspect this weapon to ensure that it is clear. I'm going to look down the mag well and I'm going to make sure that it is clean, clear, and free from obstructions. I'm going to look along the back of this breech face area here, again, ensuring that it's clean, clear, and free from obstructions. I'm going to be looking at that firing pin hole to make sure that I do not see the firing pin protruding from the firing pin hole. I'm going to look down here into the feed ramp area and up into the chamber, again ensuring that it is clean, clear, and free from obstructions. At this point here now, I have visually inspected this weapon and it appears to be clear. I am now going to do it physically. That means I'm going to take my finger, I'm going to come down into the magwell area and in a sweeping motion come across the back of the breech face, up into the feed ramp area, through the chamber, and out. Okay, so it looks just like this. And I do not feel anything, so we can go ahead and send that slide home, and this weapon is now clear. Now we need to do a takedown. And so what's very unique to Glock is it requires us to fire the gun in order to do a takedown and split the lower and the upper. And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, right? Freedom protector, which is know the weapon you're working on. And so with the weapon pointed in a safe direction, we're going to go ahead and pull the trigger. Then I'm going to take my thumb and my index finger and I'm going to place it on either side of the slide lock. I'm going to apply some downward pressure. Now it's not going to move because it is currently engaged, and we're going to have to pull the slide back just a little bit to disengage it and release it so that it can go down. So I'm going to take my other hand, come up and over the slide just like this. And now with that downward pressure on that slide lock here, I'm going to pull the slide back just slightly. That's it. That's all it needed. And now I have that play that I need. And then I can push it off, and we have separated into two halves, an upper and a lower. The Glock has three safeties, okay? It has our trigger safety here, it has a drop safety up on our cruciform, and we have a firing pin safety on the slide. The first safety we're going to talk about is our trigger safety right here on our trigger shoe. Our trigger shoe is connected to our trigger bar. On the trigger bar, we have this portion here, which we refer to as the vertical extension or the shark fin. All the way back here on the trigger bar is our bird's beak, and this is the area that interacts with our connector. And then on top here, we have our cruciform, and at the rear where it's bent, that is our sear. Okay? So to understand how our trigger safety works, in the back of it, we have a little tab. We call that the safety tab. And when I press in the safety on the front of the trigger shoe, the back is going to disengage and go inside the shoe, just like that. And when I release, it comes back out. So let's take a look at that now on a frame. Now remember that this gun is in the fired position because we had to fire it in order to separate it, okay? And so what we're going to do is I'm going to manually reset it by pushing that vertical extension, that shark fin, all the way forward. And as I do that, we're going to see that safety tab in the back of the shoe pop out and re-engage. See it? And now when I let it go back, it's going to put itself right against the back of the rear polymer of the trigger guard, just like that. And it is now engaged. And so we want to make sure that it has a really good tight fit resting up against the back of that polymer. And so what we're going to do is take our two thumbs and we're going to put it on either side of that trigger safety, and we're going to press down. And we're going to make sure that it has good resistance and that it's not giving way and disengaging. And that is good to go. The next thing we're going to do is check the operation of the trigger safety and make sure that it moves back and forth freely with no obstructions. So again, I'm going to push forward on my shark fin, and I'm going to press that trigger and making sure that the safety tab is engaging and disengaging with no problems. And it is. So that's a safety check for our trigger. That's good to go. The next one we're going to do is our drop safety, and so let's talk about that. All right, for our next check, we're going to be checking the drop safety on the cruciform, okay? And so let's understand how that works. So we have our trigger shoe and we had our safety. As I press that safety in and that safety tab retracts up into the shoe, as that is occurring, the trigger is moving back just like this, okay? And the rear here, that bird's beak, is hitting the arm of the connector. As it hits the arm of the connector, it's going to be guided down. And once it comes down, that's when the gun fires, okay? On the other side of our cruciform, what's happening is it's sitting up here on what we call the shelf. That's this area here. And as it's hitting that connector again, that angle, it's going to push it down and off the shelf. So what we need to make sure is that the cruciform is sitting up there nice and tight on that shelf, and that it doesn't automatically just fall off and cause the gun to fire. So let's look at our frame for a second, and we'll reset the trigger just like so. So here we are. What I'm going to do is take an armorer's punch, and I'm going to put it dead center of the cruciform, and I'm going to firmly push down and make sure that it does not fall off the shelf and fire the weapon. I'm also going to right on the sear, and I'm going to press down and make sure that it does not fall off that shelf. The next thing I'm going to do is take a small punch, and I'm going to put it between the front of the cruciform and the rear of the polymer, and I'm going to give it a little nudge. Just like this. I'm not manhandling this. I just want to make sure that it doesn't inadvertently, with just a light touch, fall off the shelf and fire the gun. And so that's it. That safety is good to go. That passes. All right, so let's understand the firing pin, the safety plunger, and how this all works together, and do our safety check for our firing pin safety. So on your firing pin, you have the lug face in the back. The lug face is married up, or engaged as we say, to the sear on the rear of the cruciform, just like that. Okay? And our vertical extension is met and married up with our safety plunger. Okay? And so when we pull the trigger, our vertical extension is telling the safety plunger, hey, I need to move, I'm being pulled. Okay? And so as this is going back, and our married up on our lug face, this is going back, hits the angle of that connector and drops, our firing pin now, because it has a spring on it, is propelled forward. It comes through the breech face via the firing pin hole and ignites our round and fires the gun. Make sense? So here in the slide, we can see that the firing pin is protruding right now through the firing pin hole, and it's in the fired position. It's in the fired position because we had to fire the gun in order to do a takedown. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to reset it to the non-fired position. When I do that, we should see the safety plunger pop up into ready position. Just like that. The next thing I'm going to do is shake the slide so I hear a rattle. I do. And I'm going to engage the safety plunger by pushing it down and shake it again. And you should still hear the rattle. Okay? The rattle means that it's clean and it's clear and it's free from obstructions. It doesn't mean that the gun is safe, okay? It just means that it's clean and clear and free of obstructions. If you do not hear the rattle, then it's time to clean the gun. Okay, so you pull that out, clean it all, clean the spring, follow my guides on exactly how to do that. So now we need to make sure that the safety is working. So it's engaged and it's ready, and I should not be able to push this firing pin forward because there is no trigger with a vertical extension telling it that, hey, somebody's pulling the trigger. So we should not be able to get by that safety plunger, and I can't. It's not coming out, okay? Then I'm going to push it down and simulate as if it was engaged, and I'm going to push it forward, and we should be able to come right through, just like that. Okay? So this one passes muster. Now that we covered the three safeties of the Glock, we need to talk about engagement. Now, engagement isn't a safety of the Glock, but it plays a vitally important role in making sure that the Glock is a safe firearm. So we have our firing pin here, and we have the lug face of the firing pin. That lug face is covering the sear right here, and Glock says you need to have 2/3 coverage of that sear in order for the firearm to be considered safe. So let's actually take a look at that here in the slide. Here in the slide, we have the lug face of the firing pin, and our trigger would be inside the frame, and the sear is backing right up to that lug face, and we need to have 2/3 coverage in order for the firearm to be safe. Well, what does that mean? Well, visually speaking, it's really tough, even with an armor's backplate, to tell completely what 2/3 coverage of that little piece of metal is. And I have a little trick so that you can visually kind of understand what it is. The sear on a trigger bar is usually around 1.3 millimeters, right? Sometimes it's 1.29. It can go up to as high as 1.33. As the firing pin thickness is usually between like 0.81 and 0.88. And that's roughly 2/3 coverage of your sear. So if we put the firing pin up to the sear and we line it up to the top, that would be considered 2/3 coverage of your sear. So to show you that, I'm actually going to take a pair of calipers out. We'll turn them on, just reset that to 0. And like I said, this is going to be right in the vicinity of 1.3 millimeters. And so right on the money, 1.3, okay? The thickness of your firing pin is going to be, again, like 0.81 to 0.88. It's going to kind of be in that world there. So 0.82, okay? So that's roughly the 2/3 coverage visually that you're looking for in order to make sure that the firearm is safe. So let's actually look down now and make sure that that's what's occurring. We're going to put our barrel in, our recoil spring in. I'm going to take the firearm. Okay. Then we're going to take the magazine with dummy rounds and we're going to insert it into the mag well. We're going to chamber around and you're going to look straight down at eye level. Okay, I'm looking at eye level to make sure that I can see it. And I'm going to put it here so we can see through this camera a little bit. But we want to look straight at it at eye level to make sure that we have 2/3 coverage. And as you can see, that is always a very difficult thing to do. So a lot of times what we do is we put the gun flat on a table and we use our phone with the lens and we snap a high-res picture and then zoom in on it, okay? Now we can do that because we have an armorer's backplate, which is a backplate that has been cut in half. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this weapon, right? What are we going to do? We're going to drop the mag. We're going to take the round out. We're going to do our visual inspection pass. Couple racks. Lock her open. Visual inspection. Physical inspection. Weapon is cleared. Point the weapon in a safe direction and pull the trigger. Okay? So now let me show you how to make, let me grab that. Let me show you how to make an armorer's backplate. So this is our handy dandy fret cutters that we love in the build community, right? And all you're gonna do is take your backplate, take your fret cutters. We're gonna line up halfway. It's already cut for us right there. We're gonna line up the jaw right into that halfway point, just like that with our fret cutters, right? Nice and even, nice and straight. Just like that, and just boom, you now have an armorer's backplate, just like that. And that just goes right into the back there. The fret cutters away. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this down and I'm going to actually show you. Go ahead and do a takedown. Okay, I'm going to pop that off. And now with our new backplate, nice, I'm going to line it up in here like so. I'm going to take a channel liner tool and just push that spacer sleeve down. I'm going to take a Glock punch and push our extractor plunger down and then line that up and push it on. And voila, my friends, we have a handy dandy armorer's backplate. Look at that, nice and beautiful and cut. Perfect, right? I'm going to go ahead and reassemble here. Put it back on our frame. Okay, and now we have a beautiful, fancy, custom-made, do-it-yourself backplate. Pretty simple, right? All right, the last thing we need to talk about today is actually doing a drop test. So I'm going to kind of clear some of this out, and then we're going to get ready to do that. Now we get to have some fun and do a drop test. And you can see here I have some copy paper laid out as the surface we're going to use to drop the gun onto. Now, copy paper is both hard enough yet durable enough that we don't have to worry about ruining our gun. The surface is important, but it's not as important as the height from which the gun is dropped and the weight of the gun. And to understand that, it comes down to Newton's second law of motion, which is for every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction. In this case, the weight of the gun times the speed that it's traveling, or the height from which it's dropped, is going to equal the impact that happens and the reaction that occurs from that impact. Now earlier we were doing our safety checks and you saw me take a small punch and go to the front of the cruciform and push it and give it a little nudge like this. Now that's not found in any Glock manual or any Glock reference anywhere. That is me as a person who has drop tested so many weapons in my lifetime that I know that it's not the impact that causes it to fail, but rather the reaction, okay? That forward motion on that spring here coming forward and that reaction going back, making that cruciform fail and drop off the shelf. Now with that said, I have never had an OEM cruciform and an OEM spring fail on me, but I have had plenty of aftermarket springs and aftermarket triggers fail this test. Our next thing to keep in mind here is that you have to do this test before you put sights on, okay? So we already did the safety checks and these weapons have already been drop tested. So we're going to do this one today. So we don't have any sights on here and I am going to run an optic. Well, an optic has weight, so we need to include that into our test. In order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple pieces of black electrical tape, just like this, put it on, and I'm going to grab some ceramic magnets. And these are fantastic to use to simulate the weight of our optic, just like that, okay? Put one on top of the other, right on top of the tape, and now we have the weight mirroring what our holosun is. Now let's talk about the height. The reality here is you never have to do a drop test more than 6 feet, okay? And I don't care what anybody tells you, but that for me is a good judge of what it would actually be like in the real world. If you think about a person who is 6 foot tall and the gun is extended at eye level and that gun drops, it's going to drop at 6 feet. And if it drops out of their holster or out of their waistband, it's going to drop at 3 feet. So going way above 6 feet or doing like a 10-foot or a 15-foot drop is just ridiculous and it's unnecessary. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop it from about a 6-foot height. We cleared everything out of the way and we're ready to do our drop. We're going to do the drop in 6 different orientations, okay? So it's going to be straight on like this, then the reverse, which is upside down. We're going to go straight down on a plunge like this, barrel first. We're going to come all the way from the back like that, and then we're going to do a left and a right drop. So we're going to take a magazine with dummy rounds in, because this is real world. We're going to insert it in, and we are going to rack and chamber a dummy round, just like that. And now we can do a drop. I'm up here, Freedom Protector. You ready? Woo! Hard she blows. Coming on a straight plunge. Muzzle up. Left drop. Right drop. She has performed beautifully, my friends. So we'll take this off, drop that magazine, clear that round, look down the chamber, make sure that we're clear. Couple racks, lock open the slide, do our visual check, and then our physical check, and we are good to go. She passed. That's it for today, my friends. Semper Fi, do or die.